In the pilot episode of Cask and Convos, we'll hear from Ward Williams, CEO of Seminal, as he talks about how Seminal is using AI to combat art plagiarism. Cheers to innovation!
Copyright for the better part of 300 years has really experienced no revolution. The issues that are raised by Scarlett Johansson's voice, Drake's voice being used, Indigenous artists' work and their cultural symbols that are being used is really drawing to light the lack of progress, the lack of proactiveness in governments to address laws around copyright. We've gone from an era where people were picking up an annuity in the check, sitting back on a beach drinking margaritas, getting $1,000 a month from Getty Images, to give away your art for free. And I thought that was one of the greatest injustices in the art world I've ever come across. Some artists are scared, I understand that. I think that in order to be relevant in the new world, it's very important for artists to educate themselves, embrace it, and learn how to survive, learn how to adapt to the new world. And I think that with Seminal, we're going to give them the tools to do that.
In a world where innovation meets conversation, welcome to Cask and Convos, where the clink of glasses harmonizes with the spark of groundbreaking ideas. I, Shabani, welcome you on behalf of Dot Infinity to the beautiful barrel room of the LaMadonna bar on Little Collins Street, Melbourne. Here we bear honest stories, insightful reflections, and transformative ideas of product leaders from the forefront of technology. Join us as they unwind and provide exclusive insights into what defines their present and how they are steering the future of tech and customer experience. All in a relaxed bar-side chat. Our guest today is Ward Williams, CEO of Seminal.one, a platform that is revolutionizing art copywriting, offering a unique AI-driven solution for artists and estates to protect and monetize their IP and streamline artist brand collaborations. All right, Ward. One of the most recent stories that we are hearing right now is around Scarlett Johansson and her voice being plagiarized or stolen by OpenAI. I think this is becoming more of a problem which is getting highlighted now in terms of intellectual property rights and copyright, but that's been a problem for ages. We've seen it with the artwork of Indigenous people and many other artists as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's certainly not a new problem. And the Scarlett Johansson issue specifically refers to infringement on people's name, image, and their likeness using their voice. And once again, this isn't a new problem. Just last year, we saw Drake's voice being used in a viral TikTok song. And all of a sudden, Universal was up in arms trying to take that down, flagging every instance of the song being played over TikTok with millions of views overnight. And it's a really interesting landscape at the moment with generative AI, just in terms of how quickly new forms of copyright and entertainment and media can be created in an instant. And I think that what this is drawing to light is the fact that copyright for the better part of 300 years has really experienced no revolution. So when you take a step back and you think, well, where were these laws established? Where did we first create laws to protect products of the mind, which is media and copyright? It was created in Switzerland in the 1800s, where around 40 countries came together and were signatories to a single set of laws called the Berne Convention. And since the Berne Convention in the 1800s, there's really been little to no movement in rights, other than specific entertainment groups that have lobbied governments all around the world to change those rights. There's been little cooperation between governments, and there's certainly been no plan to address the problems in copyright. And so the issues that are raised by Scarlett Johansson's voice, Drake's voice being used, Indigenous artists' work and their cultural symbols that are being used, is really drawing to light the lack of progress, the lack of proactiveness in governments to address laws around copyright. And so, we've gone through an incredibly turbulent time in the backdrop of GPT and Mid-Journey and Stable Diffusion and different models that are continuing to be released. And I think that it's finally struck a nerve with the creative community and brought to light all of the shortcomings in the existing copyright law. So it's a fascinating time to be in the space.
Absolutely. And I believe that you're no stranger to art, right? We would love to hear why art.
So for me, originally, I was an investment banker. I was working in mergers and acquisitions for food and agricultural companies. And I didn't really enjoy that job. And on the side, I was a bit of a novice photographer myself. I loved photography. I thought that there was an incredible power in digital art, capturing a moment in time and it becoming ingrained in the zeitgeist and just becoming a cultural symbol for people that they immediately remember. And I think that my love for imagery and my love for art was really born out of the fact that I grew up in a household where my mum and dad were very serious art collectors. Every wall was draped in beautiful contemporary Australian art, all of the most notable names in Australian art, and in more recent times, emerging artists from all around the world, Indigenous artists from Europe, artists from mainland China. And I think my love for art really started there. And being a lover, more specifically, of digital art, what I saw was a big challenge for digital artists, photographers, graphic artists, illustrators. And that challenge was that all of them that I spoke to, that I was friends with, were struggling with the concept of monetizing their images. And so we've seen an interesting trend play out, I guess, in the last 20 years in digital art. Gone are the golden era of Shutterstock and Getty Images, where photographers could list all of their photography and they'd pick up a check in the mail every month, $1,000. And that was sweet. But what happened in the space was that free stock photography platforms emerged, which and are still very successful today, are encouraging photographers and digital artists to give away their commercial photography for free. So the idea here, the meme that they've been sold by companies like Unsplash or Pexels, is that if you give away your photography for free, people will use it, take advantage of it, exploit it, and you'll amass a following, and at some point down the line, you'll get a brand endorsement. Now, of course, what I saw at the time was that the most followed, downloaded, viewed photographers on those platforms had less than 1,000 followers. And they had hundreds of millions of views, millions of downloads, but they weren't seeing the fruits of their labor. And so, we've gone from an era where people were picking up an annuity in the check, sitting back on a beach, drinking margaritas, getting $1,000 a month from Getty Images, to give away your art for free. And I thought that was one of the greatest injustices in the art world I've ever come across. And so my journey into the art was then a mission to help photographers make money with their files. And that was really the birth of Picture.
Yeah, I've followed that journey, and it has been a very fascinating journey. Picture being a platform for artists to reach their consumers, and now to Seminal One, which has literally evolved into a media company. Would love to hear more about that.
Definitely. So when we launched Picture, the idea was quite simple. To help photographers, we would create a marketplace where they could list their imagery and create a limited edition print run of each image listed. And we would then service a global platform and marketplace where customers could come on and select their favorite image, buy a print run and an edition from the set, and completely spec it out. So a bespoke print order to your desires, 2 meters by 3 meters on shiny canvas with a black oak frame, and we would handle everything on behalf of the artists. And so there was no upfront expense for them. We'd look after printing, packaging, shipping, payments, and then ultimately payouts to the artists. And so we launched that business at the time, and it was going pretty well. We had artists from over 84 countries join the network. We sold prints into over 20 countries around the world, trading in all sorts of currencies. And an interesting event took place the week of launching the business, and that event was Justin Timberlake selling his back catalogue of song rights to Sony for $150 million. And the thought in my head was, well, Justin Timberlake's not the first musician to sell their back catalogue of rights. Of course, before that it was Bob Dylan, Whitney Houston's estate, David Bowie. Just last month it was Michael Jackson, $1.2 billion valuation for his song rights. And the thought process that went through my mind was, well, musicians are making a great loot off the back of their song rights and enough to go and live on a beach for the rest of your life. What are photographers, illustrators, painters, what are they selling their reproduction rights for? What did the greats that we know of, Andy Warhol, Frida Kahlo, Jackson Pollock, what did these guys sell their IP rights for? And of course, I then did due diligence on the industry and came to learn that virtually every artist in history has died owning their IP rights. So throughout history, every single artist has relied on the sale of their originals, the canvases, the editions, the sculptures that the stencils that they make, and they sell that through the gallery, or they sell it themselves independently or online. But when you sell your physical canvas, what you're not selling is your reproduction rights. You maintain your copyright, your intellectual property rights, and the right to go and license that for commercial use. And so every single artist in history has sold their originals. However, they've gone to their grave owning their intellectual property rights. Not a single artist that I've come across has ever sold their rights while living, and only a handful of photographers have sold their IP rights once they've passed to someone like a Getty Images. And so quite literally, there are millions of rights owners out there, being independent artists or the estates that have inherited the work, who are sitting on a very valuable asset class. However, the first thing that happens when an artist dies is the estate will go through a studio. They'll send the originals to Sotheby's and Christie's or any auction house to see some value for that. But the IP rights go into the metaphorical attic. They're forgotten. Nobody even realizes or recognizes that they're sitting on a valuable asset class. And so we thought, well, let's make a pivot here and help artists who are living from hand to mouth, stereotypically. Let's help them see value in their IP rights. And when we decided to make that pivot, we realized a couple of big issues with the visual arts industry as it relates to copyright and media when you compare it to the music industry. The first is that artists are represented by galleries throughout their whole lives. And the galleries, all they know how to do is put the canvas on the wall, and that's it. Yeah. And once it leaves the gallery space and a customer comes in and they buy that work, the gallery has no further relationship to the work. And so then nobody's looking after the media. And in comparison, when you look at music, they're not represented by galleries. They're represented by Sony, Warner Chappell, Universal Music, international mercenaries in exploiting and litigating against rights. So not only do they have teams out there marketing and creating commercial opportunity for rights, bringing up ad agencies, talking to the H&Ms of this world, but they've also got legal teams that when they find people using their media, they'll come down on you like, I won't say, but they're a very scary force. And so that's one of the biggest problems that artists are facing right now, is that nobody is representing them as an agent to help them market their reproduction rights. So there's no income coming off of it. The only income that they see is off of the original. So that's one big problem in the arts. And then the second big problem is that when you compare visual arts to the music industry or the film industry or any other form of media, literature, podcasting, film, there's no digital licensing ecosystem. So in music today, if you're a musician, there are platforms where you can go and drop in your music and it will be proliferated out into multiple different verticals for licensing. And once again, you can put your feet up on a beach and collect your royalty check in the mail or in email now, and it'll be proliferated out into streaming, social media integrations, gaming integrations, radio, all types of different automated licensing models where you're earning a royalty every time your creative work is being used. However, in the visual arts, it doesn't exist. There's no licensing mechanism at all. There's no digital licensing ecosystem. And what we see as a result of this is rampant infringement. Everywhere you look in the visual arts, artists are being ripped off for their work. They're not receiving their fair dues, and they're not even receiving attribution. So there's a huge breach of their moral rights. And when you take a step back and you say, well, why is it that the visual arts community hasn't evolved to service the digital licensing ecosystem? It's quite simple. Music has understood the value of their reproduction since radio. And then we had the vinyl industry, and then we had the cassette industry, the CD industry, and then we had the Napster era. And music had to, as well as film, as well as literature, as well as podcasting, when we had the peer-to-peer file sharing era, the way that we evolved past that and got to streaming was developing a database and a mechanism to detect where people are infringing and pirating your copyright.
And that would have been very hard for artists to do.
Correct. It was very easy for the music industry because music is now owned by less than a dozen people. Over 30% of the world's listened to music is owned by Universal Music. And over
I did not know that.
over 90% is owned by less than a dozen people, and you can count them on your hand. And so they consolidated together and are responsible for lengthy and costly litigation processes, but which ultimately led to what we now have, which is a very vibrant, comprehensive, extensive digital licensing ecosystem for musicians. In contrast, in the visual arts world, you have millions of artists who are self-represented all around the world that are not consolidated. Nobody has a database of who authored what work, who has a license to use what work, and as a result of that, nobody is able to track infringement.
True.
And what we see is rampant piracy of copyright in the visual art world. And so Seminal, the business that we ended up pivoting to, was set up to address this exact problem. The first thing we developed was a platform for artists, for estates that have inherited the work, or for their agents, could be a gallery, could be a talent agent. They can come onto our platform, upload the media, and from there, what we do is we monetize, we protect, and we help the artists exploit the value of their copyrights, realize the true value of their rights. So that's what the Seminal business has turned into today.
Awesome. All right, we'll take a break now. Oh, I believe our Negronis are coming in. Awesome. These look great. Would love to know more.
Yeah, so these are our house barrel-aged Negronis, aged in this barrel just here. So
This exact one.
This exact one. So Tasmanian oak, ex-charred barrel, rested at 8 weeks, and it's got a mixture of Triple G gin, local gin, House Rosso sweet vermouth blend, and St. George Brutto Americano, which is an Italian-American bitter that adds the nuanced flavour to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
This looks great.
One sip, everybody knows the rules.
Let's
Give
do
it a rating. Cheers. Oof.
It's really nice.
Ooh, this is dangerous now. One sip.
You can take a few more, that's fine.
No, but we have to review it. We have got to. I think that for me is perfect, and it's very dangerous to be drinking it now when I need to go back to work and continue building out the Seminal platform. I'm going to sit at an 8.9. I could drink those all night.
Oh, that's great.
I could have a very dangerous night at this time.
You know, Negronis are supposed to really enhance your creativity, so I'm sure you'll come up with something really great after you go back to work.
I'm sure my board will love hearing this.
Yeah, that's the ideal way to start a board meeting, right? And you know, there happens to be a little boardroom right behind this room, so that's perfect. You know, you can just.
I think the next board meeting will be here at LaMadonna, so perfect location.
Perfect. Actually, I'm loving this, whatever you've told so far about Seminal, and it kind of brings it to a full circle, right? When we are looking at art and we are looking at artists, AI seems to be the biggest threat right now to the community, you know, with rampant replication happening, not just in terms of their artwork, but also their style. And now you are building a solution which is powered by AI and technology, which is actually helping that community. So, would love to know more. Like, what are you doing in terms of the technology?
Yeah, definitely. So when we receive images and media in our platform, we're using a set of algorithms and AI to dissect and segment, crop every single element, creative element out of the imagery that we receive. And what that allows us to do is determine and make an understanding about whether or not an artist is leveraging existing creative work and whether we need to create a sampling agreement, a royalty distribution agreement, and a licensing agreement between the original author, the original creator, and the new creator of what is called a derivative work. And so this is one of the most transformative leaps forward for the visual arts community. Nothing has ever been developed like this because of the lack of database. And of course, in music, this is a well-worn path. If you use someone's chord progression, if you use someone's lyrics, if you use a riff, if you use their voice, there's a multitude of different things which would constitute a need for a sampling agreement. And so once we understand who owns the creative work, you might use someone else's work, it might be a completely novel work. Once we understand who's using that, we've got a set of algorithms that crawl and look through the internet for infringement, for people that are actively commercializing your artwork without a license. And that's really our first mission at Seminal, is to eradicate copyright infringement. Today, it's art world. Tomorrow, it could be any form of media. So it could be your name, your image, your likeness, your signature, your voice, your image that's being used on anything, on t-shirts, on coffee mugs, on advertisements, on billboards. It could extend to music, it could extend to anything. So that's one of the most novel things that we're doing in terms of technology and use of AI in the company. I think another sort of interesting element of our tech stack is what we're using within the blockchain, how we're leveraging tokenization. And one of the most important parts of developing this lineage of copyright, this history of who has created what work, is when did you create it? And that question is becoming even more important with the proliferation of work that we're now receiving through generative AI. There's an incredible amount of IP imagery that is being created every single second on all of the AI models. And so for us, what we view as an important challenge for the copyright and entertainment world to overcome is provenance. When and where was a work first created and who authored it? And so for us, that's where tokenization is an enormous technological leap that helps us track when a work was in fact created. And so in doing so, we can distinguish who is the original author of a work when it is listed and tokenized on our platform. And so I know that there's been a bad rap about tokens recently. It's unfortunate that I happen to look like Sam Bankman-Fried. The disheveled Jew looks out of fashion now, but we're bringing it back. However, I think that there's an important PR exercise here with our users. We don't tell them how we use the blockchain. We run it in the background on their behalf. And I think that pure Web3 still has a long way to go. So it's not something that we're necessarily exploring, but we are using tokenization as a tool to track provenance. I think in future there's some interesting discussions around split ownership, fractional ownership. Can that be programmed into the blockchain, as well as using cryptocurrency to perform payouts? If you have to distribute micropayments for small licensing royalties to artists in Morocco or Tunisia, if you're using the traditional banking system, you'll be paying a $20 fee every time you go to send them money. So I think that there's different ways that we can use it. We're certainly exploring it, but I still think that there's a long way to go in massaging this idea with artists, with the general public. So yeah, that's how we use AI and technology.
Loving this. And I think what I love the most about the platform is also you've not just used technology, but you're still keeping the human at the heart of it all. The kind of work that you're doing with all the artist communities. And would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's so exciting, what gets me out of bed every day, is the transformative impact that we're having on different artists, be it, Indigenous artists in Australia in remote communities, street artists in Brazil, in Mexico, painters that are in the hills of Mongolia. This is a truly international business already. We've got licensing deals pretty much in every continent now around the world, connecting to major organizations that are using artwork and are paying significant fees to access the cultural capital of artists and their audiences. And I mean, what's really exciting is that for artists, especially the ones that I mentioned, that are living in remote communities all around the world, the type of deals that we're striking for them are life-changing. And these are not small sums of money. They're life-changing to the artists, and the joy that we get out of creating opportunity for them is what's the driving force behind our company. It's to help artists share their stories and share their powerful messages that they work tirelessly, in dark studios hidden from the world. That's what's most pleasing, is putting that on display and helping them actually achieve value with that. In terms of businesses that get to work with artists, it's also very special to see them take their story and somehow commercialize it, bring it to the market, and transform that. So it's behind Seminal, we've got a philosophy that we eat when artists eat. We don't charge. It's completely free to use our software and our platform for all artists, for all media owners, for all media agents. It's free to screen for your infringement. It's free to connect with brands. And so we only eat when we create value for artists. And we're really driven by creating new ways to introduce and integrate art into society and make our lives more interesting.
That is such a beautiful story. I mean, the kind of work that you guys are doing over millennia. I mean, it's always been that the cost of creation has always been borne by the artist. And yes, they do get a small fee for their artwork or whatever they create, but that fee has also been going down. And it's been harder and harder for artists to maintain that identity of their own and just get the right dues for it. So this is a beautiful story, and congratulations on doing the right kind of business. Speaking of business, so you did mention that it's definitely great story for corporates as well. But what else? What does a business have in it by engaging you as a media company?
Yeah, one of the most powerful tools that Seminal offers is the ability for brands, manufacturers, ad agencies to connect with artists all around the world. Mm-hmm. And what people might not appreciate when I tell them that is that we're allowing businesses to access the most powerful storytellers. These are influential people that have a very profound message that resonates with audiences. Artists have an incredible cult following. And it's not to say that they're mindlessly following artists. It's to say that they've got a unique, novel voice in the community. And that's what brands are looking for in this age of inundated content, inundated advertisement. They're looking for something that will cut through to the consumer. And when brands decide to work with artists, it completely changes what their own brand stands for and aligns with. And so, look no further than what Cadbury Chocolates has done with their Roses Chocolates line. Mm-hmm. This was an item that you'd go and buy for your grandma on the way to visit her. And by working with young Indigenous female artists, they've completely transformed the demographic of who is going into the supermarkets buying those chocolates. No longer are you buying it for your grandmother. Nothing against my grandmother, by the way, and they're always a good plug for her. But what you're now seeing is young men and women who are looking at what Cadbury is doing for the arts community and what they're doing for their own ESG reporting standards and how they're perceived in the public. They've completely transformed the demographic of customers from 60-plus-year-olds to millennials and Gen Z. Yeah. And I think that that's fabulous. I think that that's really innovative. And I think that, for brands to contribute to the arts community, is a wonderful philanthropic adventure that they can introduce into their business. And for me, I see it as a win-win-win. Introduce artists into the community, align with your brand, and promote the community. So all I see is benefits from what we're doing, connecting artists with brands.
Absolutely, and I think there's this great opportunity for brands to actually go hyper local by connecting with the artists within the community, and capitalize on that, because people might not relate to a foreign brand, but when it comes and becomes part of the community, by endorsing the culture and the arts of that, that's a great opportunity.
100%. Last night I was on call with a CMO of a very large French conglomerate, major fashion company, which everyone would know. And, they run a globalized strategy, which is becoming more and more common now with international brands and conglomerates. Globalized being global but local. And so what's interesting about the visual arts community is there are a handful of artists that have managed to transcend borders, but generally speaking, cultural tastes and preferences are limited by borders. And so if you look at Keith Haring's biggest market, it's in China. But of course, everyone in the West, North America, Australia, right now, the hottest thing is Middle Eastern and Asian artists. That's exotic to us. And so I think that it is reflective of, this phenomena in biology that humans want what they can't or don't have. And so, that's what's most exciting about what we're doing is it's not just taking an artist in a remote community and connecting them with a brand. It's about taking them overseas and offshore to a completely different market that they otherwise just wouldn't be able to access. Because, like I said, they don't have that representation. So, it's interesting to see how brands tap into local trends to access different demographics. And that's what really Seminal allows them to do, is go into new markets, hone in on new audiences that they currently don't have, and run an integrated campaign that's artist-driven with a very strong message that you can post to your Instagram alongside the artist. So, yeah, it's very encouraging, exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of art, I think what we have in front of us is also a bit of a piece of art. One special thing about this barrel room is each of these barrels has a different flavored Negroni. It's been flavored with a different hint of spice. So I have an interesting question for you. Now, if you were to flavor your own Negroni, what would it have?
Oh, there's so many options. I think last night I was at my grandmother's having roast lamb that was smothered in rosemary. And I just think this burnt Negroni here could just benefit from a sprig of rosemary in there. So I think rosemary would be the right shout. If you wanted to get very, very quirky though, if you wanted to have a little fun, I reckon just a teaspoon of Vegemite just circled into this might be an interesting combo.
That's definitely for a very adventurous palate, I must say. It took me a while to get used to Vegemite, especially when I got to know what's the exact quantity to apply on toast. I think that's the first mistake that anybody does when they come to this country.
Yeah, it's a coming of age. Yeah. It's the indoctrination. So yeah, you're now officially an Aussie.
Well, now I would love to explore something with you. Now, looking at the future, and especially even now, we are seeing that increasingly the cost of knowledge is going to zero. The cost of creativity is going to zero, because it doesn't take a lot of effort to create creative content. So where do you think future lies for artists and just the creative community as a whole?
Yeah, I understandably, there's a lot of concern in the space right now, especially in the visual arts. I think because they don't have that representation, and it's been such a fright in such an instant how you learn that your work is being stolen and is being commercialized. And so there's been a big wave in the visual arts community to say no against AI. And I think that that's probably because of the fact that they don't have representation. When you look at the music world, Bill Ackman, who is the largest shareholder in Universal Music Group, he's invested billions of dollars into catalog acquisition and into artist investment in growing their persona, their brand. And he famously came out a few weeks ago and very relaxed, very nonchalant said, you know, it's generative AI, the creativity that we see coming out of it, it's throwaway. And he's very comfortable. People want to listen to his catalog of music because they resonate not with the music, not with the sound of it, but with the artist and the author of that creative work. You know, be it Justin Timberlake, be it Michael Jackson, be it Bob Dylan, Taylor Swift, you know, people resonate with a human connection. And I think what's incredibly fascinating is that in light of the writers' strike that happened last year in Hollywood, in light of ChatGPT, writers were all put out of work, and you know, we're now at a point where the cost to produce what was once a $100 million production is coming down to hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just for script writing, but also for using generative models in the film itself, using generative music in the film itself. And what I still see, even in light of generative techniques being used in film production, is that if you look at every movie poster, every TV show poster, all of the marketing collateral features humans, people on the front of the advertisement materials. And I think that it's far more reflective of our innate wanting to connect with humans. You know, people will not resonate with something that's generatively made. And that's something that we certainly believe holds true in the art community. And more particularly for the art community, because every single work that is a seminal work, that is transformative, that changes the zeitgeist forever. You know, we had tomorrow and now we have the future. Every piece of artwork that has entered that zeitgeist is saying something about our politics, our social state. It's saying something that's incredibly relevant and personal to the people that consume it. And that's not something, that nuanced understanding of our world around us and how we feel, that's not something that you can program into a machine. And so when you see Banksy rock up in Ukraine, stencil a work into a piece of concrete that's been blown off the side of a building, it instantly reaches hundreds of millions of people, not because the artwork itself is so profoundly different. It's because of the timing. It's because of what it means to people in that exact moment. And so I don't think that artists have anything to worry about. We do have unlimited content. What artists should always concern themselves on is, are they satisfied? Are they hitting the market with the messaging at the right time? What do they want their work to say to people? And provided that they continue to answer those questions, which they are, and they keep their head down, I think that there's always going to be opportunity for them. So some artists are scared, I understand that. I think that in order to be relevant in the new world, it's very important for artists to educate themselves, embrace it, and learn how to survive, learn how to adapt to the new world. And I think that with Seminal, we're going to give them the tools to do that. So it's not all doom and gloom. People need to be a little bit more optimistic about the future. So this is one of the greatest times in history to be alive.
Absolutely. I definitely believe that. I think you've very rightly summed it up. It's essentially about not just being scared about AI, but essentially it's about putting the human back in, and the human will always be there to find the meaning in whatever the creation is. So yeah, it's been lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming to our Cask and Convos, and thank you for enjoying our Negronis as well.
Should we cheers for a send-off? Thank you very much for having me.
From data management and product innovation to regulatory compliance, whether it's optimizing costs or enhancing efficiencies, Infinity is your partner for solving tricky problems with a human-centric and tech-powered approach. Connect with us at contact@infinity.co.